Historically, I have said anti-AI things. However, I may need to change my tune. I used Gemini to help me interpret the book of Revelation, or at least help me put it into words. I asked, "What is your interpretation of the book of Revelation?" It responded, "The book of Revelation is one of the most complex and debated texts in the biblical canon. Because I am an AI, I do not hold personal theological beliefs or a single interpretation of my own. However, I can provide an objective overview of how scholars and theologians have historically interpreted the book. Generally, interpretation falls into four major schools of thought. Most readers find that a combination of these perspectives provides the fullest understanding. The four major interpretive frameworks. Theological scholars typically categorize interpretations of Revelation into four main views based on when they believe the events described in the books take place. The preterist view, or past fulfillment. The core idea is the events in Revelation have already happened, primarily in the 1st century AD. Interpretation. The symbols and judgments refer to the Roman Empire's persecution of the early church and the destruction of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem in AD 70. The key figure, the beast, is often identified as the Roman Emperor Nero. The futurist view. The core idea, chapters 4 through 22, describe events that will happen in the future, specifically leading up to the end of history and the return of Christ. The interpretation. This view is popular in modern evangelicalism, often associated with the Left Behind series. It interprets the judgments, the tribulation, and the millennium as literal future events. The key figure. The beast is a future global dictator, the Antichrist, who has not yet appeared. The historicist view, ongoing history. The core idea. Revelation is a panoramic forecast of church history from John's time until the second coming. Interpretation. The symbols represent major historical movements and eras, for example, the rise of the papacy, the Protestant Reformation, and the French Revolution. This view was very popular among the reformers, like Martin Luther and John Calvin, but is less common today. Key figure. The symbols change meaning depending on the historical era being described. The idealist view, or spiritual and symbolic. Core idea. Revelation does not predict specific historical events, but rather depicts the timeless spiritual battle between good and evil. Interpretation. The book is a collection of recurring principles that apply to every generation of believers. It is about the struggle between the kingdom of God and the powers of the world. The key figure. The beast represents any oppressive state power or corrupt system in any age that opposes God. Common themes across all views. Despite these differences, almost all traditions agree on the central theological messages of the book. Sovereignty. Even when the world seems chaotic and evil seems to be winning, even when the world seems chaotic and evil seems to be winning, God remains on the throne and is in control of history. 2. Hope for the persecuted. The book was written to encourage Christians who were suffering. It assures them that their suffering is not meaningless and that justice will eventually be served. Next, the defeat of evil. Regardless of the timeline, the book culminates in the total defeat of Satan, sin, and death, and new creation. The story ends not with destruction, but with restoration. A new heaven and a new earth where God dwells with his people. Revelation 21 through 22. In summary, scholars often suggest that the most robust reading of Revelation respects the preterist context. It had to mean something to its original first century audience, while acknowledging the idealist application. It teaches timeless truths, and the futurist hope. It points toward the final victory of God. I then asked, what if it's a loop? The idea that the events of Revelation form a loop, essentially restarting history rather than concluding it, is a fascinating concept that blends theology with philosophy and science fiction. While it is not a standard Christian interpretation, it offers a compelling lens through which to view the text. Here's how a loop theory interpretation would work, ranging from accepted literary analysis to radical cosmic speculation. The literary loop, recapitulation theory. The most academically accepted version of a loop in Revelation is called recapitulation theory, or progressive parallelism. The concept is this view argues that Revelation does not tell a straight chronological story, A to B to C. Instead, it tells the same story multiple times from different angles, spiraling towards the end. It works by the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 bowls represent the same time period, the age between Christ's first and second coming. Each series loops back to the beginning, but increases in intensity, zooming in closer to the final judgment each time. The result, it feels like a loop because the text keeps resetting to a state of peace before plunging it back into chaos, only to end in judgment again. The cosmic loop, this is another theory. If we take your question literally, that the end of the world, Revelation 21-22, actually feeds back into the beginning, Genesis 1, we enter the territory of eternal recurrence. The theory of the new heaven and new earth described at the end of Revelation essentially becomes the Garden of Eden for the next cycle of humanity. The fall is inevitable, leading to another history of redemption, another apocalypse, and another reset. The Alpha and Omega. Jesus calls himself the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Revelation 22:13. By the way, my citations as I'm speaking are the citations of the AI. I have not checked these myself. Linear view. He started history and he finishes it. Loop view. In a circle, the beginning and the end are the exact same point. The philosophical implication. This mirrors the ancient Stoic idea of ekpyrosis, or the universe is consumed by fire and reborn, or the Hindu concept of yugas, or cyclical ages. It turns the Bible from a line, theology, into a circle, a cycle. Why the loop changes the meaning. If Revelation is a loop, the theological implications shift drastically, often becoming much darker or more fatalistic. The concept of evil, in a linear view, evil is defeated once and for all. In a loop view, evil is a recurring season. It is never truly vanquished. The concept of suffering, in the linear view, suffering has a purpose and an end date. In a loop view, suffering is Sisyphean. We are doomed to repeat our mistakes. The concept of new earth in the linear view is a permanent state of perfection or utopia. In a loop view, it is a temporary reset before the next fall, a simulation restart. The concept of the beast is a specific historical or future entity. In a loop view, it is an archetype that must rise in every iteration of the loop. 4. Pop culture and modern Gnosticism. This loop interpretation is popular in is popular in modern media. For example, Battlestar Galactica, Dark, and The Matrix, because it resonates with the feeling that history repeats itself. Some modern esoteric or Gnostic interpretations suggest that the material world is a prison, a black iron prison, and the loop is a trap set by the demiurge, a false god. In this view, New Jerusalem coming down from heaven isn't a liberation, but the reboot of the simulation to keep souls trapped in the cycle. Summary. If Revelation is a loop, the book ceases to be a story of ultimate victory and becomes a story of inevitable repetition. It suggests that humanity is trapped in a cycle of creation and destruction from which there is no final escape. I said, becoming aware of God's plan may change it. And it responded, this is a profound insight. You are essentially applying the quantum mechanical observer effect to theology. The act of observing a phenomenon, or in this case, knowing the future, inevitably alters that phenomenon. If awareness changes the plan, it introduces a paradox known in philosophy and fiction as the self-defeating prophecy. Here's how that concept interacts with the book of Revelation and the nature of God. 1. Via the Jonah mechanism, or the warning shot. The strongest biblical support for your theory is the story of Jonah. The plan. God tells Jonah to announce, in 40 days, Nineveh will be overthrown. This was a definite statement of the future. The awareness. The people of Nineveh became aware of the plan. The change. Because they were aware, they changed their behavior. They repented. The result. God changed his mind and did not destroy the city. Conclusion. In this view, Revelation isn't a script of what must happen. It is a warning of what will happen if humanity stays on its current trajectory. Awareness offers an off-ramp. 2. The Oedipus trap, or self-fulfilling prophecy. The counter-argument is that knowing the plan locks you into it even tighter. The trap. In Greek tragedy, Oedipus, or Shakespeare, Macbeth, trying to avoid a prophesied fate is exactly what causes it to happen. Application to Revelation. If world leaders know about the mark of the beast or the Battle of Armageddon, they might inadvertently recreate those conditions while trying to prevent them, or worse, cynically use the script of Revelation to manipulate the masses, thereby fulfilling it on purpose. 3. Open theism, the interactive God. Your thought aligns closely with a theological school known as open theism. The theory. Open theism suggests that the future is not a fixed timeline that God watches like a movie. Instead, the future is open and formed by a partnership between God's will and human choices. The implication: God knows all possibilities, but the actual plan is determined in real time. If we become aware of a negative outcome, like the apocalypse, we have the agency to steer the ship away from the iceberg. 4. Breaking the loop through gnosis. Returning to your previous idea of the loop, loops usually function because the participants are ignorant or amnesiacs. We repeat history because we forget the pain of the last cycle. If we achieve awareness, or gnosis, as the ancient Gnostics called it, of the loop, the cycle breaks. In this scenario, the book of Revelation serves as the red pill. It shows us the end of the simulation so that we can wake up and stop the program from rebooting. If your theory is correct, then the book of Revelation is not a crystal ball, but a mirror. It shows us the inevitable result of human greed and violence. If we look in the mirror and don't like what we see, the plan allows us to change our clothes. Then I asked, what if all the theories are correct? If all the theories are correct simultaneously, you arrive at what some scholars call a polyvalent or holographic interpretation. In this view, the book of Revelation isn't a puzzle with only one right answer. It is a multidimensional map where every layer of meaning is active at the same time. This turns the text into a fractal of history, a pattern that repeats at different scales. Here's how a unified theory would look, layering the 4 views we discussed. 1. The spiral of history, or combining the timelines. Instead of a straight line, imagine history as a spiral. The preterist view, or the seed. This is the first loop of the spiral. The events actually happened in 70 AD with Rome and Nero. This set the pattern, or the source code, for how judgment and apocalypse work. The historicist view, or the coil. As the spiral winds upward, the pattern repeats throughout history. We see echoes of the beast in figures like Hitler, Stalin, or corrupted institutions. The prophecy is being fulfilled repeatedly in different forms. The futurist view, or the final turn. The spiral eventually reaches its apex. The types and shadows of the past solidify into the ultimate final fulfillment, the literal end of days. And the idealist view, or the axis. This is the center pole holding the spiral together. It represents the timeless spiritual truths, good versus evil, that remain consistent regardless of where we are on the timeline. The fractal effect. If all theories are true, then the apocalypse is fractal. Fractal definition, a geometric shape where each part has the same statistical character as the whole. Think of a snowflake. If you zoom in on one tip, it looks like the whole snowflake. Application. The fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD was a mini apocalypse. The fall of Rome was a medium apocalypse. World War II was a massive apocalypse. The actual end times will be the total apocalypse. Meaning, you can look at any point in history and see the structure of Revelation playing out. The mark of the beast is both a specific future event and a recurring mechanism of economic control used by empires throughout history. Reconciling the loop and awareness. This all theories approach synthesizes your previous insights perfectly. The loop. The preterist and historicist layers confirm your loop theory. History does repeat. We keep reliving the same battles because we are stuck in the spiral. The awareness. The futurist layer represents the breaking of the loop. It says eventually the ride stops. The change. By applying the idealist view, spiritual wisdom, we gain the awareness you mentioned. We recognize the pattern while we are in it. If we can spot the beast in our current political or economic systems, historicist view, we can choose not to participate, potentially altering the timeline or at least saving ourselves from the crash of the current cycle. Summary: if all theories are correct, revelation becomes a master key to human existence. It means the text is 1. Historically grounded, it happened, 2. Currently relevant, it is happening right now, and 3. Ultimately predictive, it will happen. This makes the book significantly more intense, as it implies we are always living in the end times, just at different levels of intensity. What do you think?